There wasn't much glamour in commanding a salvaged freighter on the edge of known space, especially not one held together by recycled plating, duct tape, and spite. But for Commander Harlan Trent, that rusted-out shell of a ship, the grim answer, was more than just a job. It was home. And it was the last middle finger he could raise to the galactic order that had once laughed in his face. Harlan wasn't bred for diplomacy. He'd been born on Titan Station, raised in its slums where the air tasted like sweat and recycled piss. By the time he turned 20, he'd served 3 tours as a Marine grunt on the Helios front, got a chest full of scars, and came home to a Federation that had already started kissing alien boots. That's when he learned something that stayed with him. Humans weren't equal anymore. We were tolerated. Barely. So when the Federation signed the accord with the Zirathi, the ones who'd glassed his platoon without warning, Harlan knew where the future was headed. Not for him. Not for men like him. He bought the grim answer with everything he had left. Credits, reputation, and some favors that left bad blood behind. It wasn't fast, it wasn't pretty, but it flew. And in a lawless stretch between Systems 19 and 21, it was all the ship he needed to scrape together cargo runs, salvage ops, and, on bad days, smuggling jobs for people who didn't ask questions. Today was one of the bad days. Aboard the bridge, lit only by flickering status lights and the dull hum of life support barely holding together, Trent stared out the viewport. Ahead floated an alien relay station, Zirathi design, sleek and silver like everything they built, positioned quietly on the rim of what they arrogantly called Protected Expanse 7. Harlan called it something else, Federation Abandoned Territory. "This is it," came a voice from behind. His co-pilot, Old Riggs, who used to fly drones for mining corps before half his face got melted in a reactor breach. "You really want to poke this beehive?" "We're not poking," Harlan growled, fingers tapping across the control pad. "We're sending a message." He transmitted the false salvage code they'd stolen off a wrecked Order scout ship. The relay didn't respond. Not surprising. Humans weren't even acknowledged by the Order anymore, just tagged as non-essential species in their database. It was a silent kind of insult, the kind that didn't even look you in the eye while spitting on your boots. "We good?" Riggs asked. No response. They're doing what they always do. "Ignoring us." Harlan's lips curled into a dry smile. "Yeah, until now." He opened the weapons bay. Missiles weren't standard on a freighter, not unless you were desperate enough to barter for tech that still reeked of battlefield blood. But the grim answer had teeth now. 6 long-range warheads, rigged with proximity detonation and old-school thruster overrides to fool alien shielding. Ugly things. Human things. He didn't give them a warning. No call, no declaration, no diplomacy. He launched them straight into the silence. The first 3 hit the relay's outer skin with a bloom of fire and shredded alloys. The rest followed, tearing through the communications array, rupturing its energy core. The blast lit up the void like a dying star. Riggs flinched as the light washed through the cockpit. "God damn." Harlan sat still, watching it all unfold. There was no joy in his face, just the cold set of a man who'd decided enough was enough. The relay burned quietly, its signal dead, its arrogance crumbling like its hull. "Contact made," he said flatly. "Let's see if they ignore that." Within 30 seconds, long-range sensors picked up movement. 3 Zirathi cruisers rerouting from orbit above Dalar Prime, closing fast. No doubt they'd noticed. No doubt they were pissed. Riggs looked nervous. "They're gonna respond hard." "Good," Harlan muttered, voice low. "Let 'em come. I've got more messages to send." He tapped the console and engaged the ship's fallback route, an unpredictable jump pattern that would scatter their trail like broken glass in hyperspace. The grim answer trembled as the engines powered up. But in that moment, just before they jumped, something flickered on the comms channel. A signal. It wasn't from the Federation. It wasn't even human. It was alien. Zirathi dialect. And it translated into one phrase, blinking on the screen like a curse. Unregistered vessel. You have violated Expanse protocols. Prepare for forced boarding and seizure. Harlan leaned forward, smiling coldly now. Not this time. And he punched the throttle. The stars stretched into blades as the grim answer hurled itself through hyperspace, dodging the gravitational lanes that normal ships clung to. This wasn't a clean jump. It wasn't even legal. But then again, what was legal anymore, when your species had been quietly erased from the galactic discussion? Trent sat hunched over the console, sweat trailing down the side of his face. The hull screamed from the strain. Parts of the ship weren't designed to take this kind of distortion. The gravity core blinked red once, then again, but held. Barely. Riggs gripped his armrest, jaw clenched. We lost 2 panels on the rear stabilizer. I know, Harlan grunted. This route's suicide. So's begging. The jump bled out. Stars snapped back into place, and the grim answer reappeared in a dark patch of space between relay stations, uncharted, barely on the maps, and forgotten by anyone who didn't have something to hide. Harlan stood slowly, stretching his legs, and walked over to the weapons locker. He opened it, revealing 3 old human assault rifles, 2 slug pistols, and 1 box marked HE charges, human-made high explosive, outlawed by most federated species because of its messy efficiency. He checked everything like a man brushing dust off sacred relics. Riggs leaned against the bulkhead. You expecting company? I'm expecting consequences. They'd struck first. For the first time in years, a human ship had made the first move. Not a plea, not a protest, a goddamn attack. And Harlan knew what came next. The Zirathi didn't take things personally. They took them strategically. And a relay station wasn't just tech. It was sovereignty. He hadn't just made noise. He'd made war. But he didn't regret it. Not for a second. He pulled open a sealed container under the floor and took out a worn data chip. Plugged it into the main console. The screen flickered with footage. Grainy, but clear enough. The last moments of Echo Squad 9, his old unit. A team of 10 men dropped into the Tzathar Gorge on Helios 4, back when the Zirathi were alleged aggressors and the Federation still pretended to give a damn about human life. Their mission was simple: extract a human diplomat held hostage. What they didn't know, what no one had told them, was that the Federation had already agreed to give the Zirathi the sector. The hostage was bait. Echo Squad was disposable. The footage showed fire, blood, static, Harlan's own breathing over the mic. He remembered every scream. He paused it just before the end, before Lieutenant Farron's head was blown off, before Medina's legs were vaporized by an overcharged plasma shell. It always stopped here. Always. Riggs watched from a distance. He'd seen the footage before. He knew the story. Still watching it, huh? Yeah. You think hitting one relay makes up for all that? No, Harlan muttered, but it's a start. A blaring sound snapped them both out of it, the long-range proximity alert. Incoming vessels. 3 signatures. Same class as the ones they'd seen on Delar Prime, Zirathi Hunter-class corvettes. Fast, agile, built to hunt pirates and smugglers, built for vengeance. They followed us, Riggs said. Number they tracked us. Impossible, we scrambled the jump. Harlan's hands were already flying over the controls. Nothing's impossible with the kind of tech they're using. Federation handed them our encryption years ago. You think this is it? He gave a humorless smirk. Not yet. They still want the ship intact. They're not here to kill us, they're here to parade us. Make an example. A deep, distorted voice came through the comms, repeating in several languages. Unregistered human vessel. You are ordered to power down. You are considered a rogue element. You will be taken for interrogation and dismantling. Comply. Harlan leaned close to the mic. Pressed transmit. His voice came out like iron dragged over stone. We tried playing nice. We begged. We complied. And all it got us was dead men and erased names. He paused, just enough to let silence drip in. You want this vessel? Come and take it. He cut the transmission. Engage cloak, he barked. We don't have a cloak, Riggs snapped back. Then kill the lights. Jam the radar. Go dark. He'd grown up on the streets of Titan, where survival meant vanishing when the right kind of boots hit the floor. Now he was using that same instinct in deep space. The ship slid into a dead patch of space debris. He powered everything down but life support and a single thruster pulse, just enough to make them drift naturally. The corvettes flew past, scanning wide arcs, waiting for something to ping back. But the grim answer was playing possum. 5 tense minutes passed. Then 10. Riggs barely breathed. Harlan didn't blink. But eventually, one of the corvettes veered off course. Close enough for a visual pass. It slowed, scanning the debris, probably looking for a heat trail. Harlan knew the type. Bored soldiers, following orders, ready to scorch a rock just to make a point. Then the sensors flickered. Docking clamp engaged. They're boarding, Riggs said, eyes wide. Let 'em. Harlan grabbed 2 rifles and tossed one to Riggs, pulled on his vest, slotted in mags. They won't send a full team, he muttered. 2 scouts, maybe 4. The rest stay on the ship. You sure about that? No. And then the sound came, a dull clank, as the airlock hissed open. The first soldier stepped through. Sleek armor, insectoid helmet, weapon drawn, a Zerathi enforcer. Alien but not monstrous, tall, lean, calculating. Behind him came another, then 2 more. They didn't say a word. Harlan didn't either. He let them come halfway down the corridor. Then he detonated the bulkhead charge he'd planted a month ago for just such a visit. It wasn't powerful enough to kill, but it blasted the corridor with white light and shrapnel. One of the Zerathi screamed, a high-pitched insectile screech as part of its leg shattered. Harlan and Riggs opened fire. The corridor lit up with tracer rounds. The aliens fired back, but their targeting was sloppy in close quarters. Harlan's rounds punched through one of their helmets, turning it into shattered bone and smoke. Another dove behind cover, but Riggs flanked, caught it in the side. More blood, more noise. In 30 seconds it was over. 4 dead. 0 captured. 0 taken alive. Just how Harlan wanted it. Riggs stood panting, shoulder bleeding. That's gonna piss him off. They were already pissed. So now what? Now we talk. Harlan grabbed the comms unit off the body of the lead alien, plugged it into the console, crossed a few wires. He knew a little Zerathi, not the polite kind. The war kind. He opened a channel directly to the corvette's command. Commander Harlan Trent, he growled. Former Echo 9, you remember us. You left us to die. But we didn't. And now I'm telling you this. You think Earth is quiet because it's weak? Number. It's quiet because it's watching. He let that hang. And now it's waking up. He killed the feed again. Then he hit the thrusters. Full burn. The grim answer tore through the debris field like a bullet through water. aiming for the one place no sane man would hide. The Old Belt. A graveyard of ancient mining colonies and forgotten ships, full of radiation, malfunctioning drones, and orbital wrecks. It was uncharted, dangerous, and crawling with failed AI defenses. And that's exactly why Harlan chose it. "They won't follow us there," Riggs muttered. "No," Harlan said, eyes narrowed. "They'll send drones. Probes. Cowards. They'll call in the Council. The Federation might even notice now." "Let them all come," Harlan said quietly, deadly calm. "We'll give them the same thing we gave those scouts." "And what's that?" He looked at the smoldering bodies in the corridor, smoke still rising off armor plating. "First contact, human style." The Old Belt wasn't on any modern navigation charts for a reason. Once a thriving zone of human mining operations in the early interstellar era, it had become a graveyard after the Great Collapse of 2181, when Earth's expansion efforts ran face first into the brutal economics of alien trade pacts. The Federation had sold off rights to Zirathi contractors in exchange for security guarantees, and the Old Belt had gone dark. The miners who stayed behind became ghosts. The ones who didn't, well, their bones floated between shattered stations and forgotten dreams. As the grim Answer slid through that radioactive junkyard, its hull groaned with every shift of the unstable gravity pockets surrounding them. Navigation was nearly impossible. The system pulsed with dead satellites, rogue energy surges, and long-abandoned defense drones running on corrupted logic. But Harlan knew it better than anyone else. He'd been here before, a long time ago. He punched in coordinates that weren't listed on any official system. Not anymore. Riggs stood behind him, blood from his shoulder seeping into the worn fabric of his shirt. "You sure this place still exists?" "Station 13's still out there," Harlan said. "Or what's left of it." Riggs muttered under his breath. "You're gonna get us killed chasing ghosts." "We've been dead since we launched the first missile," Harlan said quietly. "Now we just get to pick where we rot." It took 2 more hours to reach the broken hulk of Station 13. What remained looked like a carcass twisted in zero gravity. Half a ring, scorched panels, and a skeletal arm of what used to be the docking bay, hanging limp like a dislocated limb. But the beacon still blinked. Once every 72 seconds, just as it had when Harlan first stumbled on it as a younger man, looking for places to disappear. No law came here, no alien patrols, not even scavengers. Station 13 wasn't just forgotten. It was cursed. They docked the grim Answer manually, scraping metal on metal as they forced the airlock into place. No pressurization, no power, just vacuum and a whisper of stale death. They suited up, armed themselves, and entered. Inside, it was colder than the void. The main corridor was sealed with ice, the kind that forms when atmosphere is ripped away violently. Desiccated human corpses floated near the ceiling, frozen in place, some still clutching tools or weapons. No blood, just dust, decay, and regret. Riggs muttered a prayer under his breath. "How many died here?" "Too many." "Why didn't they leave?" "They didn't get the chance." The power flickered as Harlan reconnected a bypass to the core generator. The lights coughed, then dimly lit the hallway, like an old man opening his eyes after a long coma. The main terminal room still held together. Barely. He slid into the command chair, fingers dancing over a broken interface, entering a security override he hadn't used in over a decade. The screen buzzed, then cleared. Access granted. "What is this place, really?" Riggs asked, lowering his rifle. Harlan didn't answer at first. He just stared at the screen. Then he said, "This was supposed to be Earth's backup plan. A fallback fortress, before we were sold out, before they started saying aliens were friends and humans were the problem." Riggs tilted his head. A bunker? Number A weapon platform. But they never finished it. Supplies ran out. The Federation pulled funding. Then they signed the Zerathi Pact and made this entire sector off-limits. He turned and looked directly at Riggs. They didn't just abandon this place, they erased it. Riggs blew out a slow breath. So what now? We finish what they started. It took hours to reboot the command systems. Many parts were burned out beyond repair, but a few key systems still had juice. External sensors, drone control arrays, and, most importantly, the deep signal array. Something most people had forgotten existed. A buried, ancient technology tied into humanity's early colonization efforts. Built for sending distress signals so deep into the void that even black holes couldn't swallow them. Harlan didn't want to send a distress signal. He wanted to send a rallying cry. He patched in audio, stared at the blinking light, and spoke into the void. This is Commander Harlan Trent. If you're hearing this, then you remember what Earth used to be. Before we were sold, before we were erased. You remember what it felt like to matter. He paused. I attacked a Zerathi relay station, killed a boarding crew. And I'm still alive. That means something. He leaned closer to the mic. You've got nothing left to lose. I know it, because neither do I. So if you're a ghost in the dark like me, come find Station 13. We've got weapons, we've got space, and we've got unfinished business. He ended the transmission. Riggs stared at him like he'd grown another head. You just declared war. No, Harlan said. I just invited others to remember we're still human. Back on the grim answer, he patched into the ship's damaged black box. He needed data. On the Zerathi ships, on their patrol routes, on the encryption keys they'd used. Anything that could give him an edge. And what he found sent a cold shock through his chest. The scouts that had boarded them weren't just standard enforcement. Their comms log carried an encrypted seal from the Galactic Council itself. Not just a response team, not just retribution. It was a sanctioned kill mission. Riggs saw it too. They sent Black Ops after us. Harlan's jaw clenched. Means we hit something important. More than just a relay. Maybe that station wasn't just comms. Maybe it was listening to us. Surveillance? Or worse. He stared at the flickering screen, heart thudding. They've been watching Earth, cataloging resistance, locals, fighters, maybe even movement cells. Riggs swore under his breath. So what? We just stirred the whole nest? Number, we burned it, and now they're coming. The next 12 hours passed in restless silence. Harlan stayed on comms. Riggs patrolled the station, rigging explosives in case the Zerathi found them again. The entire station was a coffin with a pulse, but Harlan knew that sometimes all you needed was a good coffin to make a last stand. And then, something changed. The sensor grid blinked. Incoming ship. Not Zerathi, not Federation. Old human design, civilian class, scarred but functional. Then another, and another. By the end of the hour, 5 ships hovered near Station 13. No IDs, no registries, just beaten metal and hard-coded encryption responses to Harlan's message. Riggs stared out the viewport, stunned. People actually came. Harlan stood, tightening his belt, adjusting his weapon sling. His voice was calm. They never left. They were just waiting for someone to remind them what being human used to mean. He met the first team at the airlock. 3 men, 1 woman, all rough-edged and wary. Former Marines, privateers, smugglers, survivors. One had an eye tattooed with Earth's old flag. Another wore a broken Federation officer's badge around his neck like a curse. None of them spoke right away. But when Harlan stepped forward and said, "You ready to fight?" They all nodded. He looked around the room. this ragged reunion of the forgotten. He didn't see weakness. He saw potential. He turned back towards the terminal, where a new signal was already flashing. More ships, more ghosts, more reasons for the Council to be afraid. Station 13 was no longer forgotten. It was awake, and war was coming. Station 13 was never meant to hold this many people. By the third day after Harlan's broadcast, more than 30 vessels orbited the rusted hulk, most of them patched together haulers, modified gunships, and freighters older than the last war. Some flew Earth colors long outlawed by the Federation. Others bore no markings at all. A few were alien designs, clearly stolen or liberated. And every one of them answered the same unspoken promise, that someone was finally fighting back. Inside the station, the air was stale, the corridors crowded, and the lights flickered under the strain of 100 systems being jury-rigged to life. But none of that mattered. Not to the men and women pouring in, not to Harlan. He stood in the command deck, looking out at the growing swarm of ships like a man watching history wake up from a coma. Riggs stood beside him, arms crossed, staring through the reinforced glass. Half of these guys are criminals. The rest are mercs who'd kill us for a warm meal. I don't need saints, Harlan said. I need people with nothing left to lose. He wasn't wrong. Down in the hangars, rough soldiers trained in rust-stained corridors. Engineers rebuilt ancient drones using salvaged alien cores. Weapons were counted, distributed, sharpened. The station buzzed with the frantic, dangerous energy of a people who had been ignored too long and were ready to burn something just to feel the warmth. But Harlan wasn't just building an army. He was building a message. And messages had to be loud, clear, and terrifying. He stood before the gathered crews that night, in the hollowed-out center of the old cargo dome. The air smelled like oil and sweat. Old Federation banners had been torn down. Someone had painted over the walls with charcoal-black symbols, earthborn insignias, protest phrases, and a single phrase, "Humanity doesn't kneel." They were rough men, broken, scarred, too old to be soldiers again, too angry to be civilians. And they were listening. Harlan stepped up onto a crate and stared them all down. "I'm not a politician," he started, voice raw. "I'm not here to beg. I'm here because I got tired of watching our people die quiet deaths, while the ones who sold us out got rich calling it peace." He scanned the room. No cheers, no applause, just hard stares. "They told us the Federation was unity, that the Zirathi were allies, that our pride was a problem, our defiance was a danger, so we bent the knee, we took orders, we obeyed. And what did that get us?" He waited. A grizzled man near the back muttered, "Graves." Harlan nodded. "Exactly, graves. Silence, erasure." His voice dropped low, just enough to make them lean forward. "But now we've got something they're afraid of again. A voice, a cause, and enough men and firepower to make them bleed." This time, someone clapped, a slow, deliberate sound. Then more, and more, until the dome echoed with the sound of fists slamming metal and boots stomping decks. Harlan raised his hand. "We're not trying to save the Federation," he said. "We're here to bury it, and send the Council a message they can't ignore." Later that night, Harlan stood alone in his quarters. Bare metal walls, a flickering terminal, and the constant hum of overloaded power cells vibrating in the floor. He stared at a data pad, reviewing incoming ship registries, crew rosters, weapons inventories, and the list of the dead from Echo Squad 9. He never deleted it, never let himself forget it. A knock at the door. Riggs entered without waiting. His face was tense. "We've got a problem." Harlan didn't look up. Just one? This one's inside. Riggs dropped a datapad on the table. It showed a schematic of the docking bay. One of the newest ships, the Echelon, had come in quietly. Too quietly. Its transponder had been masked. Crew manifest, blank. No comms, no visual logs. Harlan narrowed his eyes. You searched it? Yeah, all standard. But 2 of the crew, ex-Union security, high-grade implants, the kind used for council assassins. That got his attention. Harlan stood. They here to kill me? Maybe. Maybe to spy. Maybe just waiting. Harlan holstered his pistol and walked toward the door. Let's not wait. The Echelon's interior was sleek, too clean, too precise. Federation design at its core, with all identifying marks stripped. Harlan and Riggs moved through the narrow hallways with rifles raised, their boots silent on the padded floors. One of the crew, pale-skinned, wiry, with a predator's eyes, met them near the engine room. He didn't flinch. Commander Trent, he said calmly, as if greeting an old friend. We expected this sooner. You're not one of us, Harlan said. The man smiled thinly. I used to be, before your kind started throwing missiles like tantrums. That was enough. Harlan shot him in the leg. The man screamed, dropped, but didn't beg, didn't curse. He just looked up and said, You don't know what you've started. I do, Harlan replied coldly. That's why I'm not stopping. They dragged him to the station's brig, a section barely functional, but still sealed. The rest of his crew didn't resist. They knew the game was over. Back in command, Riggs sat on the edge of the control desk, loading his sidearm. So now we've got spies. We'll get more. You think the Council's watching us? I think they never stopped. Riggs frowned. You sure we can win this? Harlan stared out the viewport, at the swarm of ships, at the broken wrecks being reforged into weapons, at the humans no one had cared about. Until now. I'm not trying to win, he said. I'm trying to make sure they never forget us again. By the next morning, the first operation was underway. Recon teams launched from Station 13 in modified civilian vessels, using old mining drones to map out the nearby relay routes. They weren't looking for fights. They were looking for patterns, convoys, blind spots, weak points, and they found them. The Council wasn't reacting fast enough. Maybe they thought this was just a flare-up. Maybe they underestimated Harlan. Good. Because the next step wasn't survival. It was strike back. They hit a weapons depot on Tarsus Ring, blew the docking bay before the sentries knew what hit them. They stole plasma rifles, detonated fuel cells, and left a message etched in the station walls. We remember. A week later, they intercepted a Federation surveillance drone near Argo Drift, reprogrammed it, sent it back with a new file uploaded. Footage of the burning Zerathi relay. Footage of Harlan standing next to the alien corpses on his ship. It went viral in under 3 hours. The Federation tried to scrub it. The Council denied it. The Zerathi demanded retaliation. And across the galaxy, more ghosts stirred. But it wasn't all victories. The 5th raid went wrong. A small team, led by a man named Grant, one of the earliest to arrive, was ambushed at a fueling outpost. Half his squad was killed. The rest captured. And then came the broadcast, a Council newsfeed, polished, perfectly timed. No blood, just control. Terrorists from an unregistered human cell have launched unprovoked attacks on peaceful sectors. Their actions threaten the fragile peace between species. We ask all sentient beings to report contact with these rogue elements. Humanity does not support them. The message ended with footage of Grant, his face bruised, eyes defiant, kneeling before a Zerathi officer. Then the feed went black. Riggs slammed his fist against the console. "They're turning us into criminals." "They always did," Harlan said quietly. "They're gonna kill him." "Then we kill more of them first." Back in his quarters that night, Harlan opened the old black box again. Watched Echo Squad 9 fall. Again. Watched his own face, young, hopeful, crawl through the mud while artillery lit up the sky. He closed the feed and whispered to no one. "We're still here." The door slid open. Riggs stepped in. "You ready?" "For what?" "We just picked up another transmission." "From who?" Riggs handed him a datapad. The screen showed an Earthborn signature, coordinates, a ship, a message. "To Commander Harlan Trent. We've been waiting for your kind of war. En route." Harlan stared at the pad for a long time. Then he smiled. A real smile, the kind a man wears before he lights the fire. The incoming ship was like nothing they'd seen yet. It arrived without a sound. No grand entry, no warning, just a black, triangle-shaped silhouette gliding into Station 13's orbital grid like a blade across soft flesh. No lights, no transponder, but every sensor lit up the second it appeared. Shield signatures, old Earth design, pre-Federation. Weapon bays that didn't match any current registry. But most chilling of all, the ship's name was burned into the hull in jagged white paint. Not etched, not carved, just scarred into metal like someone wanted it to bleed. Vindicta. Riggs stared at the readout on the screen. "That thing's running ghost tech." Harlan narrowed his eyes. No one should have ghost tech. Well, someone does. They watched as the ship docked without clearance, overriding Station 13's decaying security like it owned the place. Whoever was inside wasn't asking for permission. They were coming in. Harlan was already walking toward the docking bay. He didn't take backup, didn't bring Riggs. This was the kind of meeting he needed to handle alone. What he didn't expect was who stepped out. A tall, dark-skinned man with silver cybernetic lines running down his temple and neck, eyes replaced with twin optic lenses. Surgical, military grade. His body armor looked custom forged, the kind no factory made. But that wasn't what made Harlan stop in his tracks. It was the face. Old, familiar, buried deep in memory, under the rubble of Helios 4. "Tyven," Harlan said quietly. Tyven stepped forward, arms out like he might go for a hug, but stopped short. "They left me behind, same as you. Difference is, I didn't forgive." "I didn't forget," Harlan muttered. "Number, you just stayed quiet. Until now." Tyven gestured toward the station with a smirk. "Look at this mess. Rust, busted lights, old men with guns. You finally lighting the fire we talked about?" "This isn't about revenge," Harlan said, though the lie stung his throat. "It's about sending a message." "Oh, it's about revenge, brother," Tyven said, eyes narrowing. "They erased us. They turned us into rumors. And now they're gonna learn why ghosts make the best soldiers." He turned and pointed to the Vindicta. "There's more like me. I brought a few." And he had. The crew that emerged from Vindicta didn't look like idealists or freedom fighters. They looked like wolves, mercs, ex-special ops, killers. Some wore tattered Federation uniforms, blood still staining the crests. Others wore no insignia at all. One had a necklace made of alien fingers. Another carried a Zirathi skull mounted on her shoulder pad like a trophy. Riggs met them at the corridor intersection with a look of unease. Who the hell are these psychos? Survivors, Tyven said, brushing past him. Real ones. They weren't subtle, and they weren't here to play politics. Within hours of arriving, Tyven's crew started upgrading the station, overriding protocols, reinforcing outer plating, arming drone defense systems Harlan didn't even know were still buried in the sublevels. They installed jammers, signal disruptors, and, most alarmingly, a pulse cannon with enough yield to crack a patrol cruiser in half. Riggs pulled Harlan aside. You sure about this guy? No. He doesn't follow, he takes. I know. So why let him stay? Harlan looked at the Vindicta's crew, already integrating, drilling, handing out gear to the rest of the rebels like they'd been born into it. Because when the first real wave hits us, we're going to need monsters to fight monsters. The next mission was already planned. A raid on Deep Point 12, an orbital depot halfway between Zirathi territory and a former Earth outpost now run by Federation contractors. Intel suggested it was a blind spot in the trade route, low security, high value. But Harlan had another reason for targeting it. Grant, the captured squad leader. Word was they'd moved him there, out of public eyes, away from council broadcasts. They wanted him to disappear quietly. Harlan wasn't going to let that happen. The strike team was hand-picked. Riggs, 2 of Harlan's original crew, and, despite every instinct screaming against it, Tyven. They took the grim answer, stripped for speed and firepower, with Vindicta flanking nearby in stealth. Approach was clean. No alarms, no patrols. But Harlan knew better. This is too easy, Riggs whispered, eyeing the outpost through the scope as they closed in. Tyven grinned behind him. Then we make it hard. They docked manually, bypassing external locks. Once inside, the lights were dim, the corridors quiet. Too quiet. They moved in formation, weapons raised, steps precise, like ghosts retracing old warpaths. The cell block was 4 levels down, deep in the heart of the structure. Security cameras were disabled, life signs minimal. Grant was there, beaten, starved, alive. Riggs reached for the lock pad. Then the alarm went off. Too late. Doors slammed shut. Overhead, the speakers crackled to life with a calm, calculated voice. We hoped you'd come, Commander Trent. The lights went red. From the ceiling panels, gas hissed. Trap! Riggs yelled. Harlan grabbed Grant, slinging him over his shoulder. Move! Gunfire ripped through the hallway as armored council troopers dropped from hidden ceiling panels. Black armor, energy weapons, the best tech stolen from a dozen worlds. Harlan's squad returned fire. Tyven was the first to charge. No cover, no hesitation, just a madman's grin and twin blades drawn from his back. He tore through one trooper, slammed another against the wall hard enough to dent the plating. The rest of the team pushed back toward the exit. One of Harlan's men took a round to the chest, spun, hit the floor. Dead. Go! Harlan barked, dragging Grant, firing behind him as they moved. They hit the docking bay. The Vindicta was waiting, ramp open, guns hot. They boarded under fire. Tyven was last through, dragging a council body behind him. Grinning. The Vindicta fired a full volley the moment they disengaged, ripping Deep Point 12 into a cloud of flames and metal shrapnel. No survivors. No second chances. Back at Station 13, Grant was stabilized, but barely. His first words through cracked lips were, "Don't stop." And Harlan wouldn't. But something in him was changing. He looked at Tyven, laughing in the corner, cleaning blood off his blade. This wasn't the fight Harlan had envisioned. This was a purge in the making. Riggs found him in the command center, poring over the Council's response feeds. The galaxy was stirring. News networks calling them terrorists, the Zirathi demanding a manhunt. The Federation condemning violence while quietly increasing patrols near human sectors. It's working, Riggs said. They're scared. Too scared, Harlan muttered. They're going to escalate. They already have. Word is they're dispatching high-orbit supercruisers, Zarathi dreadnoughts. Harlan rubbed his face, exhausted. We've got one station, some retrofitted freighters, and a crew of maniacs. And yet, we're winning, Riggs said. Silence hung in the room for a moment. Then Harlan turned to him. Get me every unregistered ship within 5 jumps of here. Tell them we're not done. Tell them the Council wants blood. And what do we want? Harlan's jaw tightened. Justice, he said. Then he looked out at the void again. But we'll settle for war. Station 13 no longer slept. Not that it ever really had. But now there was no silence, no pause. The halls buzzed with movement day and night, makeshift armor clanging, old weapons being modified, scouts returning with reports from the outer systems, ships docked and launched by the hour, new recruits, old enemies, ghosts answering the call, and they were coming in numbers that surprised even Harlan. Riggs updated the boards daily, and every time the numbers grew. 27 ships turned into 45. 45 became 73. Cargo freighters refitted with armor, rusted corvettes painted with Earth symbols, a few old Terran warbirds no one thought still flew. They were ugly, scarred, sometimes held together with wires and hope, but they were loyal. But loyalty wasn't enough. Not now, because the enemy was finally responding. Real force, not just scouts or assassins. This time, it was an armada. A scout drone had picked up images near System T9, 6 Zarathi dreadnoughts, 4 Federation cruisers, and what looked like an alien supercarrier branded with the sigil of the Galactic Council, all converging on the rim. No more denials, no more excuses. The Council was done tolerating human noise, and they were coming to silence it. Permanently. 4 days, maybe 5, Riggs said, pointing to the screen. If they're slow, which they won't be. They're not just coming for a show of strength, Harlan muttered. They're coming to wipe us out, clean. Riggs nodded. Burn the rot, rewrite the story, pretend we never existed. We have to hit them first. Riggs didn't disagree, but his jaw tightened. You think Tyvan's going to wait for orders? That was the real problem, because Tyvan wasn't waiting. The first incident came from a forward outpost near Sen 8, where Tyvan's crew had gone to secure an old trade lane. They didn't just take it. They massacred a neutral alien supply convoy that didn't even have weapons. Civilians. Non-combatants. The report came in from a shell-shocked pilot who barely escaped, his voice trembling over the static-laced comms, describing bodies floating in vacuum, a woman screaming through a cracked helmet, a child's hand pressed against a viewport before it shattered. They said it was necessary, Riggs muttered, reading the report. Said the Zarathi were hiding intel. But it was a family ship, Harlan. A family. Harlan stood in silence, the datapad shaking in his hand. This wasn't the message he wanted to send. Not this, not that. Bring him in, Harlan said. Riggs blinked. Tyvan? Yes. With backup? Do you think he'd come if he saw backup? Fair. Tyvan didn't bother pretending. He walked into the command deck like he owned the place, helmet off, blood on his gloves, a half-eaten protein bar in one hand like it was just another Tuesday. You wanted to chat? You butchered a civilian vessel, Harlan said, dead calm. Don't call them civilians. They're Zarathi. They're the enemy. You think the Council's gonna ask who had a weapon when they glass us? There were kids on that ship. Tyvan stopped chewing. There were kids in Echo Squad 9, too. Didn't stop the Zarathi from melting their organs with thermite bombs. That's not the point. That's the only point, Tyvan snapped. You want to lead a rebellion, Harlan? Then lead one. Don't start crying when the knives start cutting. I started this to remind them that humanity still has dignity, that we don't kneel, that we're not animals. Tyven leaned in close, eyes gleaming. You want dignity? Then win. Because if we lose, no one's writing history with flowers. They'll scrub our names from the stars like we never breathed. Silence. Harlan stared at him, mind screaming. Finally, he said, You're off the next op. You and your crew. Tyven's grin died. Don't push me, Harlan. I'm not pushing. I'm drawing a line. You crossed it. Tyven's voice went cold. You're making a mistake. Number, I'm making a choice. Tyven turned and walked away, hands clenched into fists. And for the first time since this all began, Harlan felt fear. Not of the Council, not of the Dreadnoughts, but of what this rebellion was turning into. Later that night, Riggs found him in the hangar, sitting alone beside the grim Answer, his ship, his old rust bucket now dwarfed by the fleet surrounding it. You all right? Harlan didn't answer for a long time. Then finally he spoke. I started this to fight monsters, not to become one. Riggs sat beside him. We don't get to choose the clean road, brother, not in war. But we do get to choose the one that doesn't drown in blood. Riggs gave a half smile. Then we'd better be quick, because the flood's coming. And it came. 3 days later, the scout ships blinked off the grid without warning. Then the long-range scans picked it up. 37 enemy ships, war formations, formed into a sweep pattern around the rim, moving in slow, deliberate arcs, herding the rebels inward. The Council had learned. This wasn't a frontal assault. This was an encirclement. They're going to box us in, cut supply lines, and crush us sector by sector, Riggs said, tracing their path. If we wait here, we die slow. We don't wait, Harlan said. He stood, pulled the old black datapad from his vest, and looked around the command deck. All hands, every ship, ready weapons. This is it. Riggs raised an eyebrow. This is... what? A retreat? This is a declaration. The fleet assembled within the hour. 87 ships now. Human, ugly, loud, powered by hatred and parts stolen from history. They didn't wait. They moved, straight at the center of the enemy grid, not to survive, but to disrupt, to break the pattern. Harlan led from the front in grim answer. Tyven followed, grudgingly, in Vindicta. Riggs manned the comms. The rest scattered to their formations. The void lit up with fire, and humanity made first contact again. The battle was chaos, not tactics, not neat formations, just raw fury. Plasma streaks arced across stars. Drone swarms collided like insects on fire. Human ships, slower, less advanced, moved with desperation and grit. Harlan flew into the thick of it, dodging cannon bursts, laying down missile salvos. He screamed into the comms, rallying scattered fighters, barking orders, refusing to yield. He watched Riggs's ship take a hit, hull breach, flames trailing, but the man kept fighting. He saw Tyven ram a Zerathi interceptor, jump onto its hull mid-space, and plant a bomb with his bare hands. He saw Council vessels retreating. Not many, but enough. And he saw hope. For a second. Until the Dreadnought arrived. It slipped through hyperspace like a shadow, bigger than anything Harlan had ever seen, half ship, half city. Its cannons rotated like the bones of gods, and it fired. 2 rebel ships disintegrated instantly. Another buckled and cracked open like a can. The comms lit up with screams. And in the chaos, Harlan heard a voice from the Dreadnought. This is the will of order. Humanity will be silenced. Your rebellion ends today. Harlan gritted his teeth, targeting the Dreadnought's forward section. We've only just begun. And he fired. They couldn't destroy it, not yet, But they didn't have to, because while the dreadnought turned to chase Grim Answer, Riggs's ship, limping, bleeding fire, slipped under its belly and detonated. Full overload. A suicide move. Harlan screamed into the comms. "Riggs, no!" But it was too late. The blast crippled the dreadnought's underside, enough to tilt it, enough to make it retreat, enough to buy time. Silence fell across the battlefield. Wreckage drifted, lives lost, dozens of ships gone. But the Council didn't press. They retreated, not in defeat, but in caution. They knew now. Humanity wasn't playing. This was war, and the ghosts were leading it. Back on Station 13, Harlan sat alone in Riggs' quarters. The man's gear still hung on the wall. His old flask sat untouched. Tyven entered quietly. "He died like a soldier." "No," Harlan whispered. "He died like a friend." Tyven placed a worn patch on the table. Echo 9's insignia. "You started something here," he said. "Don't stop now." "I won't." Tyven nodded. "Then maybe we can still burn the stars." Harlan looked out the window, where the void was no longer quiet, and he whispered, "Let them remember who we are." The station lights dimmed to half power that night. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't energy conservation. It was grief. A quiet ritual passed among the crew, not spoken, not commanded. Just done. A signal that someone important was gone. Riggs. Harlan sat alone in the main observation deck, his elbows resting on the rusted metal ledge. Outside the viewport, debris still floated. Chunks of ships, both theirs and the enemy's, drifting like broken teeth in space. Fires flared silently in the distance. Another battle won, another friend lost. He clutched the old flask Riggs used to carry. Still full. He couldn't bring himself to open it. Behind him, the door opened with a soft hiss. It was Tyven. He didn't say anything at first, just walked up and leaned beside him, staring out the window with tired eyes. Even he looked different now. The manic grin dulled, the bravado dimmed. He'd fought like a beast in the last battle, but the death toll had done something to him too. "They're calling it a victory," Tyven said finally. Harlan didn't look at him. "Then they're blind. We forced them to pull back. That's not nothing. It's not Riggs." Tyven exhaled. It's not." Silence settled between them. Harlan stared into the void. "He was the first one who believed in this, before any of you showed up, before the message, before the missiles. It was just him and me and this piece of shit ship. He kept the lights on." Tyven nodded slowly. "You want to honor him?" "I want to undo it." "Then stop acting like a priest. He didn't die for you to mourn him. He died because you gave him something to believe in." Harlan looked up sharply. "You think I wanted this? The war? The deaths?" "I think you knew it was coming. We all did. The only difference is, you had the balls to say it out loud." Tyven leaned in closer. "Now what, Commander? You going to carry his flask around like a badge? Or are you going to finish what he died for?" Harlan stared at the flask. Then, slowly, he tucked it into his vest pocket. "Bring the crew in," he said. "We're not done." In the war room, once a cargo chamber now converted into a strategic operations hub, dozens of rebel leaders and ship captains gathered. Harlan stood at the head of the table, worn datapads laid out before him, blueprints, intercepted signals, and something new, a transmission from within the Council. An anonymous source, encrypted, brief, dangerous. It read, "They're building something. High orbit. Project designation. ECLIPSE." The message was unsigned. It came from deep within the Council's internal communications, bounced across relay points to avoid tracing. But it came with attached data. Schematics, fragments of command logs, power signatures. Whatever Eclipse was, it was big. And it was real. Harlan looked around the room. "This is the next move," he said. "This is why they backed off. They didn't lose. They're buying time." "What is it?" one of the captains asked. "A weapon?" "Looks like it. Possibly something designed to shut down FTL travel, intercept human vessels. Maybe worse." "They're scared," another muttered. "Good," someone else said. Harlan shook his head. "Number they're preparing. That's worse than fear." He pointed to the star map hovering above the table, zooming into the orbital path near the Helix Arc. Council territory. Deep space. Guarded. Fortified. "We're sending a recon team. Small. Quiet. Find it. Tag it. Confirm it. And then? Then we destroy it." No one spoke for a moment. Then Tyven nodded. "You'll need someone who knows how to break into a council vault." Harlan looked at him. "You volunteering?" "I already packed." The team assembled in less than 12 hours. Harlan, Tyven, and a young tech specialist named Mara, brilliant, cold-eyed, with a scar across her scalp from a failed memory graft. She could hack anything with a signal. Their ship was an old diplomatic runner, slim, fast, outfitted with signal cloaking and illegal pulse drives. They launched from Station 13 under the cover of a radiation burst from the system's dead sun. The journey took 2 days. 2 days of silence, tight quarters, no room for fear. Harlan barely slept. Tyven kept cleaning his blades like a ritual. Mara said little. On the second night, as they hovered just outside the Helix Arc, Tyven broke the silence. "You ever think this ends with you on a throne?" he asked. Harlan glanced over. "What the hell are you talking about?" Tyven shrugged. "You're not leading a squad anymore. You're leading a movement. People worship you out there." "I'm not interested in being a hero." "Then you're stupid," Tyven said. "Heroes don't die in the dark. Martyrs do. Pick which one you want to be." Harlan didn't answer. He stared out the viewport, where the glow of the arc shimmered like an aurora of death. The coordinates from the message were accurate. They found Eclipse. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a black station, the size of a small moon, orbiting a dead planet, hidden by cloaking fields and powered by quantum fusion. From the scans, it looked like a communications array, but the output signatures told a different story. "It's a signal killer," Mara whispered, tapping her pad. "Designed to block human networks, jam weapons, cut off ships, isolate them." "EMP net?" Harlan asked. "Worse. This could black out an entire resistance fleet the moment they jump into range. No calls, no relays, no countermeasures. We'd be flying blind." Tyven whistled. "They built a hammer, and they're waiting to drop it." "We need to hit it now," Harlan said. "No way," Mara cut in. "It's shielded. One ship can't do it. We need the fleet." Tyven smirked. "So call the fleet." Mara looked at Harlan. "But that means exposing the station." "I know. It means risking everything." Harlan clenched his jaw. "This thing goes live. It's over. They won't just beat us. They'll erase us." He activated his comm pad. "Send the message." The return was fast. Station 13 responded with a full transmission. Harlan's call wasn't just a ping. It was a signal flare, a war cry, and every ship that still flew under a forgotten human flag began to turn toward Eclipse. They weren't going to wait. They were going to hit it head on. One last push before the Council made silence permanent. The fleet came. Not all of it, but enough. By the third day after Harlan's transmission, over 134 ships had gathered in the shadow of Eclipse's orbit. Station 13 was emptied, save for a skeleton crew. Old Terran warships, refitted freighters, combat-ready smugglers, and even a few defected alien vessels flying under human colors. They arrived in waves, tightening the circle around the black station like a noose pulling at a god's neck. Eclipse floated above the dead planet like a quiet tombstone. Unassuming. silent. But every scan confirmed it. Within its core sat a signal suppression array large enough to shut down every human ship in 5 systems. Not just rebel vessels, every last survivor. Earth itself, had it dared to lift a ship into orbit again. Mara's voice came through the comm. They're charging it, power output climbing. Once it hits threshold, we lose everything. Harlan Trent stood on the bridge of Grim Answer, armored up, eyes locked on the tactical display. Outside the viewport, stars blurred with engine fire. His war machine shook beneath him, not because it was weak, but because it knew what was coming. "All ships," he said into the mic. "This is Commander Trent. This is the final act. There's no surrender, no treaties. You go dark, you burn through, you lose engines, you ram. We're not here to win medals. We're here to make sure they never forget who we are." A pause. A beat. Then, "We're here to make first contact. One more time." And then he cut the comm. It was time. The attack began with a burn. Dozens of human ships surged forward, firing every available weapon. Railguns, coil launchers, plasma turrets, even industrial lasers rerouted from salvage vessels. The sky lit up, not in cold science fiction blue, but in red, orange, and fire. Human colors, angry colors. The station responded. From Eclipse's belly unfolded dozens of automated defense drones, obsidian black, AI-controlled, fast and lethal. Energy shields absorbed the first wave of missiles, but they weren't ready for how humans fought. The second wave didn't dodge. 2 freighters slammed head-on into the shield array, suicide runs. Their final act was to overload their cores and blind the sensors. It worked. "Hole in the shield grid," someone yelled through the comms. "Send the drones," Harlan barked. Mara, from her console aboard the Stiletto, activated the boarding systems. Modified mining drones, each carrying demolition charges, ripped into the outer layers of Eclipse like hornets chewing through glass. Harlan pulled the Grim Answer into a low arc around the station's equator, skimming the energy field. Enemy drones swarmed him, biting at his hull. Tyvan's voice rang through the open channel, laughter soaked in violence. "Trent, I'm taking the top side. You owe me a drink if I live." "You're not my type," Harlan muttered, but a hint of a grin cracked through. Then Eclipse spoke. Not with words, but with power. A wave pulsed from the station, invisible but real. Every ship's systems blinked. HUDs flickered, gravity cores hiccuped. Mara screamed over the comms. "They've activated partial suppression. Level 1 blackout." 5 smaller ships lost guidance and veered into debris. 1 exploded. If Eclipse hit full charge, they were done. "Get us inside," Harlan told his crew. "Now." The Grim Answer rotated, its forward missile bay opening. A volley launched, not at weapons, but at the hull itself. Blasting holes, creating paths, carving an entryway like a chisel to stone. The ship dove, through flames, through metal, and into the heart of the Eclipse station. They boarded in chaos. Inside the station, it was darker than space. Emergency lights flickered like the dying eyes of gods. The corridors weren't built for humans. Tall, sleek, alien. But the station's tech was unmistakably council-made. Tyvan was already ahead, carving down security drones with his twin blades. Mara guided from behind, her handheld console glowing like a ghost's heart. "The main suppression core is 2 levels down. We need to disable it, not destroy it. If we detonate..." "We kill our own fleet," Harlan finished. "I know." They moved fast. Harlan kicked through a reinforced door and found the control chamber. A towering room with cables running like arteries into a central sphere pulsing with deep violet light. The control core, the beating brain of the station. Mara stepped forward, fingers flying over alien glyphs, sweat beading down her face. This tech, it's reading human DNA. They didn't build this just to destroy us. They built it with us. What are you saying? I'm saying someone on the inside gave them the means to end us. Permanently. Human scientists, Federation traitors. We gave them the knife they're using to cut our throats. Harlan's fists clenched. Can you shut it down? I can slow it, maybe. Do it. She moved. Harlan turned, rifle raised. The room echoed with the sound of war outside. Explosions, static-laced screams, hulls collapsing. The rebellion was bleeding dry. Then Tyven appeared again, limping, shoulder burned, blood on his cheek. Core breach in 3 sectors. They're routing energy. You got 60 seconds before this thing goes full pulse. Mara yelled, Almost there. Another tremor. The floor shook. A panel beside her exploded. Shrapnel hit her leg. She screamed, fell. Harlan ran to her, pulled her away. It's set, she gasped. 1 minute delay, then shut down. But someone needs to stay here to hold the failsafe. Harlan froze. She looked at him. No time, just choose. I'll stay, Harlan said. No, I will, Tyven said immediately. You're the symbol, Harlan. You leave, or this whole rebellion turns into a ghost story. You sure? I've been looking for a good ending, Tyven said, grinning. Besides, heroes die in the dark, right? Harlan stared at him for a long second. Then he nodded, grabbed Mara, and ran. They escaped through the burning corridor, systems failing all around them, back to Grimancer, back into the void. 30 seconds later, Eclipse went dark. Not with an explosion, but with silence. The suppression array fizzled, shields dropped, control vanished, and the human fleet, battered and burning, saw the opportunity. They struck with the rage of 1,000 years of betrayal. Missiles screamed, cannons ripped, and Eclipse fell, a slow, burning descent into the dead planet below. Back on Station 13, days later, Harlan stood before the fleet's survivors. Only 72 ships remained. A third of the fleet, half the men and women gone, and Tyven, mad, loyal, unbreakable, buried inside the heart of a machine designed to erase them. But they'd won, not because they destroyed the station, but because they made the Council fear them again. Harlan stepped forward. No grand speeches this time, just simple words. They told us we didn't matter, that we weren't relevant, that humanity's time had passed. They erased our names from their histories. They laughed when we asked for a seat. They silenced us when we screamed. He looked at the battered crowd. But now they know. A pause. We're not asking anymore. A voice rose from the crowd. What do we do now? Harlan stared out the viewport, at the galaxy, at the future, and he said simply, now we show them what humans do best. We survive, we rebuild, and when the stars forget us again, we remind them.